What's going on, y'all? I'm back in the basement, and you may have heard the news, but Canon has discontinued the EOS M mount. I think we all probably seen it coming, with RF being the hot system for them right now in full frame. They have not paid much attention to the EFM in quite some time, so I think we all saw it coming, and they have officially announced that it is gone. It is over. So, I have a very significant history with the EOS M mount. As a person who sits squarely between an enthusiast and a professional, I do make a living from photography, but I don't make all of my living from photography. And I also like to do it for my artistic and fun family dad perspective, as well as make an income from it that that I like to make a little extra coins from. So I actually wanted to go down the road and tell you what I actually did with EOS M and my experience with it, because I have a lot of it. So let's go back to the beginning. I started with Canon full frame DSLRs in terms of professional photography. I always had point and shoot cameras from Canon. I even got a little old one right here. I'm about to let go and give to one of my younger photography friends. But always had point and shoot cameras, things like that. But I did have Canon DSLR. So I had a 5D Mark II and I had a Canon 7D. Eventually, I wanted to kind of downsize and try this mirrorless, stuff. And there was stuff out there from Olympus and, these other brands. But I was, at that time, very Canon centric. So I said, well, why not try the Canon EOS M? I have EF lenses. I could adapt to them. They had the EF to EFM adapter, which I did have and used. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to buy into it and just give it a shot. So I bought the EOS M6. That was the first M series body that I got. And I used that alongside the 5D Mark II for a professional shoot, actually, for a party. And thought it did pretty good. I mean, most people won't think that those cameras are professional, and they aren't professional in the sense that if you make a full-time living from it, you probably shouldn't be shooting with something like that. But I wasn't. I did it as a part-time income, an enthusiast. So I snuck in using that camera in a professional setting, and clients would never even really know, right? They don't know anything about photography. They just know they want great photos. So I took that M6 with the 5D Mark II, and I was like, you know what? I can go down this road. I can use the lenses, and it wouldn't be any issue. So I did that. So for a while, that's what I used, a 5D Mark II, Canon M6. Then I went down the road of saying, well, if the M6 is working for me, why not try, something that would have a viewfinder? Because what I didn't like about the M6 is that it didn't have a viewfinder. And so when it came to critical compositions, it kind of lacked a little bit in that area, because holding the camera out like this isn't really my personal cup of tea. I want it to be, be able to shoot with a viewfinder, really compose, because then you crop less, you do less in post, you can see everything critically, get it right in camera. So they had the M5 body. The M5 was more of a DSLR, a mini DSLR style. It had the viewfinder, it had a tilt screen. It actually tilted down too, so it had like that tilt down screen, but also tilted out, so like it faced out, so you could shoot overhead, stuff like that. So I got an M5, and so for a while, and actually got rid of the 5D Mark II. I said, I'm gonna just try this mirrorless thing out. It might be the future. These will be my gateway into using it and learning it. And if they make a professional EOS M body, I'll go and get that eventually when they do, which they never did. So that was the conundrum. So I had an M6 and an M5. The M5 became my main body with a 24-105 with a speed booster by Viltrox. So that made it a 2.8. So it brought the, usually with that full frame lens, the crop would make it a 38 to like 150 something. But with the Viltrox speed booster bringing it back down to the closer to the actual lens focal lengths. It was like a 25 to 112 at 2.8, and I used that for a long time. That was my main setup. It was a big lens, so then I also added a small rig grip to give me a little bit more purchase on the camera, because the camera was small, especially in relation to that big lens. So that was my event lens. You know, whenever I did events, got hired for an event, or you know, even some portrait work, I would use that Canon 24 to 105 f4 with the Viltrox speed booster, bringing it back down to a 2.8 on an EOS M5 body with the small rig cage to give me some grip on it. And the M6 became the backup body. And so that's what I used for a while. Sometimes my wife would shoot with me. So that kind of brought in, like, you know what? I need to have a third camera. So I ended up buying a second M5. So I'd have a second M5, same thing, small rig cage. I think I got an 85 1.8 Canon lens, and I used the EFM adapter on that. So now that became like a 135, right? So because I didn't have the Viltrox on that, so the actual crop factors, you know, came into play, and so that became a 135. So I had a 135, 1.8, and then I had on an M5 with a cage, and I had a second M5 with the 24 to 105, 2.8 Viltrox speed boosted with a cage. So that was my A and B camera. I like to carry two cameras. At that time, I like to use two at a time. And then my wife would have the M6. So that was kind of our event setup. And we got great results with that. I mean, honestly, it's all about, you know, at the end of the day, with 24 megapixels, Canon, you know, Canon goodness, Canon colors, shoot it raw. We were indoors, so weather wasn't an issue. You know, we shot events, right? So we were indoors most of the time, not outside. And so it worked. It literally just worked. I edited, you know, photos, delivered to clients. That's the meat and potatoes of it, right? And so I used that for a while, and I also invested in the Sigma Trio, because eventually I wanted to downsize the lenses. Like, the lenses were cumbersome. I had to have these adapters, and adapters work fine, because I think Canon is such a widely used system that the adapters, you know, they had history. They could find, you know, a formula to work for Canon, because Canon was just out there. So that wasn't an issue, but the lenses were pretty big. So I moved out of the full frame EF lenses and bought into some EOS M lenses. So the lenses that I eventually got, because I don't want to make this video too long, but the lenses I eventually got was the 22 millimeter f2. If you haven't learned by now, I got a little cold, so I sound a little strange. Bear with me, okay? So the 22 millimeter f2, that was like my street lens, my, you know, enthusiast lens, out and about with family. And then I had the Sigma Trio, the 16 1.4, the 30 1.4, and the 56 1.4. So for event work, those are my three lenses. And usually it would be the 16 and then the 56. And then occasionally I sprinkle in the 30, but I don't really like that 45 to 50 for events. That I'd use that more for portraits, you know, outdoors or whatever. But when I had my two M5s, I had the 16, 56, and that was my A and B camera setup. You know, plus I had 1.4 lenses rather than 2.8s on that 24 to 105. So I really enjoyed using that and used that for a long time. And I thought, my thought was I was going to invest in some good lenses, because at some point Canon's going to come out with an EOS M professional body, like a mirrorless body. But then they dropped the EOS RP, and that changed everything. The RP came out, and my hopes and dreams went out the door, because I thought EOS M was going to be the new mirrorless wave for them, and they were just going to build on that and make professional bodies in that arena. So I slowly started making my exit out of EOS M, except for one thing. I bought an M50 as a last ditch hope to, like, think that this was going to go in that direction. So I got rid of the M6, got an M50, and had two M5s. And that was the last of my setup. So at that point, you know, I was using the M50 to do some vlogs and some videos. I rigged it up. I had a cage for it. And I was like, I'm going to do this, going to be my video lens. But I ended up not really doing video work a lot. I did started doing vlogs like this. But I really kind of exited out of video work and really only wanted to concentrate on doing photography, because I really enjoy that more. And the process of editing videos for someone else was not my cup of tea. So I really kind of got out of that altogether. And so that's really where I started to transition to Fuji. So I got rid of, because what I really wanted was professional EOS M bodies. I wanted the M5, which I thought was the better camera, the better laid out camera, to have the flip screen of the M50, but they never did that. And I think that would have been the best camera. It had more controls, and you know, if they made the 4K not an issue right off the bat, it would have been best. And in hindsight, the XS10 by Fuji was what the M50 should have been right off the beginning. And I think they would have had probably even more sales to warrant creating an EOS M professional line, right? And the M50 kind of, the M50, the M5, the M6 could have stayed in that enthusiast, you know, consumer side, and they could have made some professional M bodies and supported it with good features and weather sealing and stuff like that, and also expand the lenses, but they never did. So yeah, I got an XT1, and that was kind of the beginning of the end. So once I got the XT1, I got a battery grip. I adapted the Canon EOS, the EF lenses that I still had, say the 85-1.8, I still had that. I adapted that on the XT1 and used it alongside my M5, and I realized, you know what? This is the mirrorless system for me. Fuji is the mirrorless system for me. So from there, I just moved on and started slowly selling out of my M series bodies. And that was about 3 years ago. And ever since then, it's been Fuji as my main professional, you know, event portrait setup, among a lot of other cameras, right? I got a lot of other point and shoots and stuff like that I experiment with. But in terms of professional use cameras, I really moved to Fuji, and I've never looked back. So listen, I started my photography journey as a professional with Canon EOS M, and sad to say that they are dead now, but they had a great run, a decent run for me personally. And I think if they really gave it some love, they probably wouldn't even need to develop the RF line. I think they really could have just expanded on the EOS M and really gave us, you know, professional bodies and really supported it with lenses. I think that was the two biggest mistakes they made. And they could have been in the mirrorless market a lot sooner than they did. And they would have been on the back of the M50, because the M50 was a super, super popular camera for YouTubers especially and enthusiasts, but they had no gateway for anything else. It kind of ended with the M50. The M5 wasn't a success. The M6 was mildly successful for them, in my opinion. But the M50 was the camera that really kind of gave everybody a glimmer of hope of mirrorless for Canon. Had a flip screen, had 24 megapixels. It just lacked in true 4K. And didn't have a lot of robust controls, and yeah, Canon never supported. So salute to EOS M.